Martha's hands bled as she clawed at the frozen earth beneath her cabin floor. The shovel had broken an hour ago. Her fingernails tore against the Montana clay, but she couldn't stop, wouldn't stop. 600 pounds of food had to go underground before the first blizzard hit, and the sky was already turning that sickening gray-white that meant death was coming. Henrik's body was still frozen somewhere out there in last winter's snow, and she'd be damned if their unborn child would starve in this godforsaken valley because she wasn't strong enough to dig. Before we continue with Martha's story, hit that subscribe button and stay with me until the very end. Drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. You're going to kill yourself. Martha didn't look up. Her grandmother's voice echoed in her head. Dig deep, dig smart, dig like your life depends on it, because it does. And she kept scraping at the pit beneath her cabin's floorboards. I said you're going to kill yourself, Martha Thornton. This time, she did look up. Eleanor Prescott stood in the doorway, her silk dress catching the late September light like it had somewhere important to be. Everything about Eleanor screamed money, the kind of money that thought problems could be solved by throwing coins at them. Then I'll die with a full belly, Martha said. She drove her bleeding hands back into the dirt. Eleanor stepped inside, her boots clicking against the rough pine floor. This is madness. You're digging a grave, not a cellar. Maybe both. Martha's shoulders burned. You planning to help or just criticize? Help with what? This paranoia? Eleanor waved her hand at the growing pit. The winter was bad last year, but that was an exception. My husband says, your husband has 3 warehouses full of grain and a heated mansion in Helena. Martha sat back on her heels, wiping blood and dirt across her apron. What does he know about one woman alone in a one-room cabin with a baby coming? The silence stretched between them like a frozen rope. Henrik wouldn't have wanted this, Eleanor said quietly. Martha's hands clenched. Henrik is dead because he believed the neighbors when they said the storm would pass. He walked out into that blizzard thinking he could make it to the trading post and back. They found him 3 miles from here, frozen solid, still holding an empty sack. I know. I was at the funeral. Then you know why I'm digging. Eleanor's face softened, but only for a moment. This is excessive. 600 pounds? You're one person. Not for long. Martha's hand went to her swollen belly. And people talk. When the snow comes and the food runs out, they remember who prepared. They'll come knocking. So let them starve. It's not your responsibility to get out. Eleanor's mouth opened, then closed. She turned and left without another word, her boots clicking a retreat across the threshold. Martha went back to digging. The pit grew deeper over the next 3 days. Martha's hands stopped bleeding. They just went numb instead. She'd wake before dawn, eat a handful of dried berries, and dig until darkness forced her to stop. The hole beneath her cabin stretched 6 feet deep, 8 feet wide, lined with pine planks she'd salvaged from Henrik's old workshop. You're destroying yourself. This time it was Jacob Winters, the nearest neighbor, standing in her doorway with his hat in his hands. You here to help or lecture? Martha didn't slow her work. Neither. I'm here to tell you the Prescott woman is spreading talk. Says you've gone mad with grief, that you're digging your own grave. Let her talk. Martha, Jacob stepped closer. People are starting to worry. They think I should curl up and die like a proper widow. Martha threw a shovelful of dirt onto the growing pile. Well, I'm not proper, and I'm not dying. This baby's coming in December, and we're both going to see spring. Jacob was quiet for a moment. What are you really doing down there? Surviving. He watched her work, then slowly began rolling up his sleeves. "Hand me that other shovel." They dug together in silence for 2 hours. Jacob didn't ask questions, didn't offer advice. When his wife appeared in the doorway with a basket of bread and preserves, she took one look at the pit and joined them. "My mother did this," Sarah Winters said, kneeling beside the hole. "In Ohio, before the war. Saved our whole family when the fighting came through." Martha felt something crack in her chest, something that had been frozen since Henrik died. "Thank you," she whispered. By sunset, the pit was finished, 10 feet deep, lined with pine and packed straw for insulation. Martha stood at the edge, staring down into the darkness, and felt Henrik's ghost standing beside her. "This is for us," she thought. "This is for the baby. This is for everyone who's going to need it when the snow comes." The first food went down 3 days later. Potatoes, 200 pounds of them, carefully wrapped in burlap and layered with straw. Martha had bartered everything she owned for them. Henrik's tools, her mother's wedding china, the silver locket her grandmother had carried from Sweden. "You're making a mistake." Thomas Prescott this time, Eleanor's husband, standing over the open pit with his arms crossed. "You're the third person to tell me that this week," Martha said. "Because it's true. You're putting all your resources into this hole in the ground. What happens when you need money? What happens when you need medicine for the baby? What happens when I need food and there isn't any?" Thomas laughed, a sharp, ugly sound. "This is Montana territory, Mrs. Thornton, not the Arctic. Food doesn't just disappear." "It did last year." "Last year was an aberration." "Last year killed my husband." Thomas's face hardened. "Yes, and I'm sorry for that. But bankrupting yourself to build a monument to his death isn't going to bring him back." Martha picked up another sack of potatoes. "You're standing in my light." He didn't move. "My wife is worried about you." "Your wife thinks I'm insane." "She thinks you're hurting." "She's right about that." Martha lowered the sack into the pit. "But I'm also preparing. There's a difference." Thomas shook his head and walked away. Through the open door, Martha could see him join Eleanor in their gleaming carriage. They drove off without looking back. "Let them go," Martha thought. "They'll understand soon enough." The carrots went down next, then the turnips, then barrel after barrel of salted pork, smoked venison, dried beans, hard cheese wrapped in wax, apples packed in sawdust, onions braided and hung from iron hooks. Sarah Winters helped. Jacob brought his sons. Even old Mrs. Chen from the Chinese camp came with sacks of rice and dried mushrooms, pressing them into Martha's hands with a knowing nod. "Big snow coming," Mrs. Chen said in her broken English. "Big, big snow. You smart girl. You live." By mid-October, the pit was half full. Martha cataloged everything in a leather-bound journal, noting quantities and positions. The baby kicked inside her, as if approving the work. But the nights were getting colder. "You need to stop." Dr. Harrison stood in her cabin, his medical bag at his feet, his face grave. "I'm fine," Martha said. "You're not fine. You're exhausted, malnourished, and 6 months pregnant. You're going to lose this baby if you keep pushing yourself like this. I'll lose this baby if I don't finish. Martha, listen to me." "No." She stood up, her hands pressed against her lower back. "You listen to me. Every person in this valley thinks I'm crazy. They think I'm wasting my time and my resources on something that won't matter. But you know what? I've been watching the signs. The birds left 3 weeks early. The bears are already in their dens. The aspens dropped their leaves in August. This winter is going to be bad, Doctor. Worse than last year. And when it comes, People are going to need help. Dr. Harrison's jaw tightened. So you're doing this for other people? I'm doing this for my child. But if it helps other people too, then good. He pulled a bottle from his bag. Tonic, iron and herbs. Drink 2 spoonfuls every morning. And for God's sake, rest. Martha took the bottle. I'll rest when the pit is full. November came with the first snow. Not the killing kind, just a warning, a taste of what was coming. Martha worked faster. The pit filled with dried corn, pickled vegetables, jars of honey, wheels of cheese, sacks of flour sealed in tin containers. 600 pounds, she whispered to herself each night, checking her journal. Almost there. The valley watched, some with curiosity, some with concern, some with quiet understanding, and some with growing dread. I need to talk to you. Eleanor stood in a doorway again, but this time she looked different, smaller somehow. Her silk dress was gone, replaced by a simple wool coat. What do you want? Martha's voice was flat. To apologize. Eleanor stepped inside without invitation. And to ask a question. Martha waited. How did you know? Know what? That it would be bad. Eleanor's hands twisted together. Thomas just got word from Helena. The railroad's already shut down because of early snow. The supply wagons can't get through. The merchants are saying, they're saying it could be months before new shipments arrive. Martha felt her heart drop into her stomach. When? They think by mid-November, maybe sooner. That's 2 weeks. I know. Eleanor's voice cracked. Thomas has food stored, but not enough. We have maybe 6 weeks' worth for our household. After that, you'll starve like everyone else. Eleanor flinched. I was wrong. I'm sorry. You tried to warn us, and I was too proud to listen. Martha looked at her, really looked at her. Behind the silk and the money and the pride, Eleanor was just another woman trying to survive in a brutal place. How much can you store? Martha asked. What? How much room do you have? In your house, your cellars, anywhere you can keep food cold and dry. Eleanor blinked. I don't know. Maybe a few 100 square feet? Fill it. Today. Buy everything you can from every merchant within 50 miles. Don't care about the price. Just buy it and store it. But you said the supply wagons, they haven't stopped yet. You've got maybe a week before the merchants realize what's happening and jack up the prices. Move now. Eleanor stared at her. Why are you helping me? Because when the snow comes and people start starving, they're going to look at your big house and your full warehouses, and they're going to remember that you didn't prepare. They're going to get angry. And angry, starving people do desperate things. The color drained from Eleanor's face. Go, Martha said, and don't come back until you're ready to work. Eleanor left at a run. Martha turned back to her pit. 480 pounds stored, 120 to go. The baby kicked hard, as if urging her on. Almost there, she thought. Almost safe. But the sky was darkening in a way that made her grandmother's voice whisper warnings in her head. The storm is coming, little one, and it's going to be hungry. The snow started falling the next morning, not the gentle warning kind from before. This was thick and fast, the kind that erased the world in white. Martha stood at her cabin door and felt her stomach twist. Too early, she whispered. It's too damn early. She had 120 pounds left to store. Maybe 2 days of work if she pushed hard. But the snow was already 3 inches deep and falling faster. The baby kicked like it was trying to break free. Martha slammed the door and grabbed her coat. The merchants' shops were chaos. Every person in the valley had apparently woken up to the same realization. Winter was here, and they weren't ready. Martha pushed through the crowd at Hanson's general store, her pregnant belly clearing a path better than any shout. "I need dried beef," she said when she reached the counter. "All you have." Hanson's face was slick with sweat. "Already sold out. Sold the last of it 10 minutes ago to the Prescotts." Martha's jaw clenched. "Beans, then. Rice. Anything that keeps. Got maybe 20 pounds of beans left. That's it." "I'll take it." "That'll be $10. $10? Martha's voice rose. "Last week it was 2. Hanson wouldn't meet her eyes. "Supply and demand, ma'am. Everyone's buying." Martha threw the money on the counter, half of what she had left in the world, and took the beans. Outside, the snow was already 6 inches deep. She made 3 more stops. Every merchant told the same story. Sold out. Too expensive. Come back tomorrow. By the time she reached her cabin, Martha had 40 pounds of food and empty pockets. She stood at the edge of her pit, staring down at the supplies that had taken 2 months to gather. 520 pounds total. 80 pounds short. "It'll have to be enough," she said to the darkness below. But her grandmother's voice whispered back, "It's never enough when you're feeding more than yourself." The trap door went down. Martha sealed it with pine boards and scattered hay over the top. From above, you couldn't tell anything was hidden beneath the floorboards. She sat on her bed and waited for the world to end. The knock came 3 hours later. "Martha, you in there?" Jacob Winters. Martha opened the door to find him covered in snow, his face red from cold. "Store's completely empty," he said without preamble. "Sarah sent me to see if you had any extra flour. We've got maybe 3 weeks of food left and 6 mouths to feed." Martha felt something heavy settle in her chest. "I've got some. How much do you need?" "Whatever you can spare." She pulled up the trapdoor, climbed down into the pit, and came back with a 20-pound sack of flour. Jacob stared at it. "This is too much." "It's what you need." "Martha, if you give away—" "Take it, Jacob, before I change my mind." He took the sack, but his eyes went to the open trapdoor. "Jesus Christ! How much do you have down there?" "Enough." Martha closed the trapdoor firmly. "Tell Sarah to make it last. This storm's going to be long." Jacob left without another word. Martha sat back down on her bed and tried not to think about the hole in her supplies. 20 pounds gone. 500 left. The knocking started the next day and didn't stop. Mrs. Chen needed rice. Old Man Patterson needed dried meat. The widow Douglas needed anything to feed her 4 children. Each time, Martha climbed down into the pit and came back with something. "You're emptying your stores," Sarah Winters said on the 3rd day, standing in Martha's doorway with guilt written across her face. "Jacob told me what you're doing. You have to stop. They're hungry. So are you, and you've got a baby coming." "I know." Martha's hand went to her belly. The baby had stopped kicking as much. Dr. Harrison said that was normal in the final months, but Martha couldn't shake the fear that something was wrong. Sarah stepped inside and closed the door. "How much do you have left?" 430 pounds. You've given away 90 pounds in 3 days. People are starving, and you'll starve too if you keep this up." Sarah grabbed Martha's shoulders. "You can't save everyone." "I can try." Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "You're killing yourself to save people who wouldn't do the same for you." "You don't know that." "Don't I?" Sarah's voice cracked. "Where were they when Henrik died? Where were they when you were digging that pit alone in the dark? They called you crazy, Martha. They laughed at you. And now they need help. So let them starve." The words hung in the air like poison. Martha pulled away. "Get out! Martha, get out of my house!" Sarah left crying. Martha sat alone in the silence and wondered if she was wrong about everything. The storm grew worse. Snow piled 6 feet high against the cabin walls. The temperature dropped so low that water froze solid in minutes. Martha burned through her firewood faster than she'd planned, and each log that went into the stove felt like a countdown to death. The baby hadn't kicked in 2 days. "Please," Martha whispered, her hands on her belly. "Please be alive. Please be okay." Nothing. She was rationing her own food now, eating 1 small meal a day to make the supplies stretch. The baby needed nutrients more than she did, or at least that's what she told herself, while her stomach screamed for more. The knock on the 4th day was different, loud, demanding. Martha opened the door to find Thomas Prescott, but not the Thomas she knew. This man was gaunt, desperate, his expensive coat hanging loose on a frame that had lost 20 pounds. "I need food," he said. No apology, no pleas, just demand. Martha started to close the door. Thomas shoved his boot in the gap. "I said I need food." "And I said no. You have supplies. Everyone knows it. You've been feeding half the valley. So you figured you'd take what's left?" Thomas's face twisted. "My family is starving. My children are crying themselves to sleep because their stomachs hurt. You're going to stand there and tell me no? I told your wife to buy supplies. I warned you this was coming." "She did buy supplies. We've gone through everything. It's been a week and we're already out." Martha stared at him. "How many people are you feeding?" "What does that matter? How many, Thomas?" His jaw worked. 32. 32? Martha's voice rose. "You opened your house to 32 people?" They had nowhere else to go. The boarding house collapsed under the snow. People were freezing in the streets. What was I supposed to do? Let them die? Martha felt the air leave her lungs. Thomas Prescott, the man who'd called her paranoid, who'd laughed at her preparations, had taken in 32 strangers and was now starving for it. She pulled the door open. "How long can you last on what you have left?" "Maybe 2 days. 3 if we cut rations to almost nothing." Martha did the math in her head. 32 people, 3 meals a day. Even if she gave Thomas everything she had, it would buy him maybe a week. And then they'd all starve together. "I can't feed 32 people," she said quietly. "I'm not asking you to feed them. I'm asking you to help me feed them." "There's a difference?" "Yes." Thomas's voice dropped. "You teach me how to ration, how to preserve, how to make food last. And in return, I make sure you and your baby are protected when things get really bad." "Protected from what?" Thomas looked over his shoulder at the white wasteland beyond. "The valley's getting desperate, Martha. People know you have food. Right now they're asking politely. But when their children start dying, they'll stop asking." Ice ran down Martha's spine. "Are you threatening me?" "I'm warning you. There are families out there who've already lost 1 child to starvation. They'll do anything, to save the rest." Martha's hand went to her belly. Still no kick. "Come back tomorrow," she said. "Bring a Lelinar. I'll teach you what I know." Thomas left without thanks. Martha closed the door and leaned against it, her whole body shaking. 430 pounds. 1 pregnant woman. And now 32 more mouths to keep from starving. The numbers didn't work. Elelenar arrived the next morning with her husband, and Martha barely recognized her. The proud, silk-dressed woman was gone. In her place stood someone hollow-eyed and determined. "Show me," Eleanor said without preamble. Martha pulled up the trapdoor. Both Prescotts stared down into the pit. "It's organized by type and preservation method," Martha explained. "Dried goods in the back where it's coolest. Salted meats in the middle. Root vegetables on the right side and sawdust. Everything's cataloged in this journal." She handed the leather book to Eleanor, who opened it with shaking hands. "You've given away 90 pounds in 4 days," Eleanor read aloud. "At this rate, you'll be empty in 3 weeks." "I know. So why do you keep doing it?" Martha met her eyes. "Because the alternative is watching children starve." Eleanor's face crumpled. "We lost one yesterday. Little boy named Michael. He was 4 years old. He just stopped breathing. His mother wouldn't let go of the body for 6 hours. The cabin went silent except for the howl of wind outside. "What do you need from me?" Martha asked. "Everything you know about surviving winter. Every trick your grandmother taught you. Every method of preservation and rationing." "And in return," Thomas spoke up, "we pool our resources. What you have, what we have, what everyone in my house has. We ration it out equally across everyone, including you." "That's not a fair trade. I'll end up with less than I started with." "Yes," Thomas said bluntly, "you will. But you'll also have 32 people willing to defend your life when the desperate ones come." Martha looked between them. At Eleanor's hollowed eyes, at Thomas's gaunt face, at the desperation that radiated from both of them like heat. She thought about the baby that wasn't kicking, about the valley outside where children were already dying, about Henrik's frozen body somewhere under the snow. "One condition," she said. "Name it. When the baby comes, you make sure we both survive. Whatever it costs." Thomas extended his hand. "Deal." They shook, and Martha felt the last of her certainty crumble away. The teaching started that afternoon. Martha showed Eleanor how to stretch a pound of flour into 3 meals, how to use bone broth to make the stomach feel full when there was nothing else, how to rotate supplies so nothing went bad, how to identify the earliest signs of scurvy, frostbite, starvation. "The children get full portions," Martha said. "Always. Adults can survive on less, but growing bodies can't." Eleanor wrote everything down in a notebook, her hand flying across the page. "What about the elderly?" Thomas asked. "Same as adults. Half rations if necessary." "Some of them won't survive on that." Martha met his eyes. "Some of them won't survive regardless. The question is who you're willing to let die first." The words felt like glass in her throat, but they were true. That was the horror of starvation. It forced you to choose. By evening, the Prescotts left with 2 sacks of supplies and a promise to return in 3 days. Martha climbed down into her pit and recounted everything. 380 pounds left, including what she'd given the Prescotts. The baby still wasn't kicking. "Please," she whispered into the darkness. "Please move. Please let me know you're alive." Nothing. Martha climbed out of the pit and lay on her bed, staring at the ceiling. Outside, the wind screamed like something dying, and somewhere in the valley, people were making the same impossible choices she was. The knock came at midnight. Martha woke to pounding on her door and a voice she didn't recognize. "Please, please, I know you're in there." She grabbed Henrik's hunting knife and opened the door a crack. A woman stood outside, covered in snow, holding a bundle wrapped in blankets. Her face was blue with cold. "My baby," the woman gasped. "She's not breathing. Please, you have to help." Martha pulled her inside. The woman collapsed on the floor, and the bundle fell from her arms. Martha unwrapped the blankets with shaking hands. The baby inside was tiny, maybe 3 months old, and completely still. "How long has she been like this?" Martha pressed her ear to the baby's chest. "I don't know. An hour? Maybe more? I fell asleep, and when I woke up she was just quiet." Martha felt for a heartbeat. Nothing. She put her mouth over the baby's mouth and nose and breathed. Once. Twice. 3 times. "Come on," she whispered. "Come on, little one." Nothing. Again. And again. And again. The woman was sobbing. "Please, please save her. She's all I have left." Martha breathed into the tiny lungs until her own chest ached, until her vision started to blur, until the baby coughed. Martha pulled back. The tiny chest rose, fell, rose again. The woman screamed and grabbed her daughter, pressing the baby against her chest. "Oh God! Oh God, thank you! Thank you!" Martha sat back, her whole body trembling. "She needs warmth and food. Do you have any milk?" "No, I haven't been eating enough. It dried up 2 days ago." Martha closed her eyes. Then she stood, walked to her pit, and came back with a jar of goat's milk she'd been saving. "Feed her this, small amounts every hour, and stay here tonight. You'll both freeze if you go back out." The woman looked up with tears streaming down her face. "I don't even know your name." "Martha." "I'm Claire, and this is Elizabeth." She looked down at her breathing baby. "We owe you our lives." Martha didn't answer. She just added another log to the fire and wondered how many more people would come knocking before the winter ended. 375 pounds, and counting down. Claire and Elizabeth were still sleeping when the second knock came at dawn. Martha opened the door to find Dr. Harrison, and the look on his face stopped her heart. "How many people are in your cabin right now?" he asked. "Just me and a woman with her baby. Why?" "Because there's a mob forming at the Prescott house. 20, maybe 30 men. They're saying Thomas hoarded food while their families starved. They're going to break down his doors." Martha's blood went cold. "When?" "Within the hour, maybe less." Dr. Harrison grabbed her arm. "Martha, if they find out you're the one who's been supplying him, they'll come here next." "Let them come." "You don't mean that." "Don't I?" Martha pulled her arm free. "I'm tired of hiding, tired of pretending I don't have food while children die in the street. If they want what's in my pit, they can ask, like civilized people." "They're not civilized anymore. They're starving." Dr. Harrison's voice dropped. "I've seen 3 more children die this week. 2 adults. People are eating their horses, Martha. Their dogs. Soon they'll start eyeing each other." Martha felt her stomach turn. "What do you want me to do?" "Hide. Take what you can carry and leave before—" "I'm 8 months pregnant. Where exactly am I supposed to go?" Dr. Harrison had no answer. Martha pushed past him and grabbed her coat. "I'm going to the Prescott house." "That's suicide." "Then you better come with me to keep me alive." They left Claire sleeping with strict instructions to bar the door and open it for no one. The walk to the Prescott mansion took 20 minutes through snow that came up to Martha's thighs. By the time they arrived, the mob was already there. Thomas stood on his front porch, a rifle in his hands, facing down 30 men who looked like walking skeletons. "This is my property," Thomas shouted. "The first man who sets foot on it gets shot." "You've got food in there," someone yelled back, "while our babies starve." "I've got 32 people living in this house. We're rationing the same as you." "Liar! We've seen the smoke from your chimneys. You're burning wood like it's nothing, while we freeze." Martha pushed through the crowd. Men turned to stare at her pregnant belly, their faces hollow with hunger. "He's telling the truth," Martha said loudly. The crowd went silent. "Who the hell are you?" a man demanded. "Martha Thornton, and I'm the one who's been feeding the Prescott house." The silence shattered into chaos. Men shouted. Someone threw a rock that bounced off the porch. Thomas swung his rifle around. "Everyone shut up!" Martha's voice cut through the noise. "You want food? I'll give you food. But you come to my cabin one at a time. Families first. Single men last. And if anyone tries to take more than their share, the deal's off for everyone." "Why should we trust you?" someone shouted. "Because I'm the only one offering." Martha met their eyes, one by one. "Take it or leave it." The crowd shifted, muttered, then slowly began to disperse. Martha climbed the porch steps to stand beside Thomas. His hands were shaking so hard the rifle barrel wavered. "You just signed your own death warrant," he said quietly. "Maybe, but they would have killed you first." Inside the Prescott house, Martha found hell on earth. 32 people crammed into rooms meant for 6. The smell of unwashed bodies and sickness hung thick in the air. Children lay listless on makeshift beds. Adults stared at walls with the empty eyes of the broken. Alolanar met her in the foyer. "You shouldn't have come. They were going to storm your house." "Let them. At least then it would be over." Martha grabbed her shoulders. "Don't you dare give up. Not now." Alolanar's face crumpled. "We lost another one last night. 7-year-old girl named Anna. She just stopped breathing, like she forgot how." Martha felt something inside her crack. "Show me your supplies." They descended into the Prescott cellars. What Martha saw made her want to scream. Bags of rotting potatoes, spoiled meat, flour gone moldy from improper storage. Thousands of dollars worth of food, completely wasted. "You bought too much, too fast," Martha said, her voice shaking. "You didn't know how to store it properly." "You told me to buy everything I could." "I told you to buy what you could store, not to throw money at the problem and hope it worked out." Alolanar's face went white. "I was trying to save lives. And you killed them instead." Martha picked up a sack of flour, crawling with weevils. "This could have fed 10 people for a week. Now it's garbage." "I didn't know." "That's the point. You should have known. You should have learned." Martha threw the sack down. "My grandmother survived a famine on less than what you've wasted in this cellar alone." Alolanar started crying, huge, racking sobs that shook her whole body. Martha closed her eyes and counted to 10, then 20, then 50. "How much is left that's still good?" she finally asked. Alolanar wiped her face. "Maybe 80 pounds, if we're generous with what we call edible. That's 4 days for 32 people, 5 if we cut rations to starvation level." "So we're dead." "Not yet." Martha turned to the stairs. "I'm opening my pit to the valley, rationing everything I have left across everyone who needs it. You're going to help me." "Martha, you can't." "Watch me." They trudged back to Martha's cabin, through snow that had started falling again. The line of people waiting outside her door stretched 20 deep. Jacob Winters stood at the front. "Is it true? You're feeding the whole valley?" "As much as I can." Martha unlocked her door. "But there are rules. You break them, you don't eat." She laid it out while the crowd listened. 1 person per family. Children get full portions. Adults get half. The elderly get whatever's left. No stealing, no hoarding, no lying about family size. "What about single men?" someone called out. "Single men get quarter portions, after everyone else is fed." "That's not fair." "Fair died when the snow started falling." Martha pulled up her trapdoor. Take it or starve. Your choice. The line moved slowly. Each person came inside, stated their family size, and Martha climbed down into the pit to measure out portions. 5 pounds of potatoes, 2 pounds of dried beans, a half wheel of cheese, a jar of preserves. She watched her supplies dwindle with each trip down the ladder. 375 pounds became 300, then 250, then 200. "Martha, you need to stop," Dr. Harrison said, when the line was finally down to 10 people. "You're giving away too much." "They're hungry." "So are you. When's the last time you ate?" Martha couldn't remember. "I'm fine." "You're not fine. You're starving yourself to feed strangers." "They're not strangers. They're my neighbors." "Your neighbors called you crazy 6 weeks ago." "And now they need help." Martha climbed down into the pit again. Her legs shook. Her vision swam. But she kept moving. 150 pounds left, and the line outside still hadn't ended. By nightfall, Martha had fed 40 families. Her pit was down to 100 pounds. Her body was running on nothing but stubbornness. She collapsed on her bed and closed her eyes. The baby kicked. Martha's eyes flew open. She pressed her hands to her belly and felt it again. A strong, solid thump that meant life. "You're alive," she whispered. "Oh God, you're still alive." The relief lasted exactly 30 seconds. Then someone started pounding on her door. "Martha Thornton, open up!" She recognized that voice. Samuel Wright, the Valley's self-appointed moral authority. A man who'd spent the last 2 months preaching about God's will while doing nothing to help anyone. Martha opened the door. "What do you want, Samuel?" "I want to know why my family didn't get any food today." "Your family wasn't in line." "Because I didn't know you were giving food away." "Everyone knew. The whole valley was lined up outside my door." Samuel's face reddened. "That's not the point." "The point is, you're playing favorites, giving to some and not to others. I gave to everyone who came and asked." "That's a lie. You gave extra to the Prescotts. I heard about it. The Prescotts are feeding 32 people. The Prescotts are rich. They should be feeding the valley, not you." Martha felt her temper snap. "Get off my property." "Not until I get my fair share." "You want your fair share? Fine." Martha marched to her pit, climbed down, and came back with a single potato. She threw it at Samuel's chest. "There, that's what your family gets for showing up a day late and demanding charity." Samuel stared at the potato, then at Martha. Then he did something she didn't expect. He smiled. "You're breaking, aren't you? Running out of food and patience both." He stepped closer. "What happens when the pit runs dry, Martha? What happens when there's nothing left to give?" "I guess we'll find out." "Yes, we will." Samuel picked up the potato. "And when that day comes, remember, you chose to save strangers over yourself." He left. Martha slammed the door and leaned against it, her whole body shaking. 100 pounds. Maybe 3 weeks if she rationed it perfectly. And the snow showed no signs of stopping. The next morning brought more problems. Claire's baby had developed a cough that wouldn't stop. Dr. Harrison examined her and delivered the news Martha had been dreading. Pneumonia. Early stages, but it'll get worse without proper medicine. "What medicine does she need?" "Antibiotics, which I don't have. Used the last of my supply 2 days ago on a man who died anyway." Martha looked at Claire's terrified face. "Is there any in the valley?" "The Prescotts might have some. Rich folks usually keep a stash for emergencies." "I'll ask." But when Martha arrived at the Prescott house, she found Thomas and Eleanor in a screaming match. "We need to keep it for our own people," Thomas shouted. "She saved our lives," Eleanor shouted back. "And now she's asking us to risk one of our people to save hers." "It's medicine, Thomas, not gold." Martha stepped between them. "What's going on?" Thomas's face was haggard. "We have antibiotics, enough for maybe 2 people. If I give them to you, someone in this house dies when they get sick. And if you don't, Claire's baby dies now." "That's not my problem." Eleanor slapped him. The sound cracked through the room like a gunshot. "You're right," she said coldly. "It's not your problem. It's mine." She turned to Martha. "How much do you need?" "A week's worth, maybe less if we're lucky." Eleanor left and came back with a small bottle. "This is half of what we have. Use it wisely." Thomas's face went purple. "You had no right." "I had every right. This is my house too, and I'm not letting a baby die when we can save her." Martha took the bottle with shaking hands. "Thank you." "Don't thank me. Just make sure she survives." The medicine worked. Within 2 days, Elizabeth's cough started to ease. Within 4, she was breathing normally again. Claire cried so hard she made herself sick. "I owe you everything," she said to Martha. "You don't owe me anything. Just pay it forward when you can." But paying it forward was getting harder. Martha's pit was down to 75 pounds. She was eating 1 small meal every other day. The baby was still kicking, but weaker now, and the line outside her door never seemed to end. "You're dying," Dr. Harrison said bluntly on the 10th day of rationing. "Your body's consuming itself to keep the baby alive. If you don't eat more, you'll both die." "I can't eat more. There isn't enough." "Then stop feeding everyone else." "I can't do that either." Dr. Harrison grabbed her face. "Listen to me. You have maybe 2 weeks before your body starts shutting down. The baby will go first, then you. If you want any chance of survival, you need to stop this madness now." Martha pulled away. "Get out." "Martha, I said get out." He left. Martha sat alone in the silence and tried to figure out how to save everyone when she could barely save herself. The answer came from an unexpected source. Mrs. Chen appeared at her door the next morning with 5 other women from the Chinese camp. "We help," Mrs. Chen said simply. "Help with what?" "Food. We bring food." The women carried in sacks of rice, dried mushrooms, preserved vegetables. Not much, but enough to buy Martha another week. "Why?" Martha asked. Mrs. Chen smiled. "You help us, we help you. This is way." Martha started crying. She couldn't help it. The kindness was too much after so many days of hardship. The women stayed. They cooked rice and made soup, and forced Martha to eat a full bowl. They sang songs in Chinese while they worked. They made the cabin feel alive again. "How do you still have food?" Martha asked. Mrs. Chen laughed. "We Chinese, we know hunger. We prepare always. Not like white people who think world owes them easy life." "Not all white people." "No, not you. You like us. You know world is hard. You prepare." Mrs. Chen patted Martha's belly. "Baby lucky. Born to smart mother." Martha hoped she was right, but that night the mob came back. She woke to the sound of voices outside. Angry voices. Drunk voices. Voices that wanted blood. Martha grabbed Henrik's knife and opened the door. 20 men stood in the snow. Samuel right at the front. "We know you're hiding food," Samuel said. "More than you're giving out. We want it. All of it." "I'm not hiding anything." "Then you won't mind if we search your cabin." "Actually, I will mind. This is my home." Samuel smiled that same cold smile. "We're coming in whether you like it or not." Martha raised the knife. "First man through this door dies. You think you can stop all of us?" "No, but I can stop you." Samuel's smile faded. The mob shifted uncertainly. Then a voice cut through the night. "Touch her and you'll answer to me." Thomas Prescott stepped out of the darkness, rifle in hand. Behind him came Jacob Winters, Sarah Winters, Dr. Harrison, Mrs. Chen and her 5 women, each carrying a kitchen knife. Eleanor appeared last, holding a pistol that shook in her hands. "This woman saved my family," Eleanor said. "She's saved half the valley. You want to rob her? You'll have to go through all of us first." The mob looked at the defenders, looked at Martha, looked at the odds. Then slowly, they backed away into the darkness. Martha stood in her doorway and watched them disappear. Her body was shaking so hard she could barely stand. "Thank you," she whispered. "Don't thank us yet," Thomas said. "They'll be back, and next time they'll bring more people." He was right, but for tonight, Martha was alive. Her baby was alive, and somewhere in her pit, there were still 50 pounds of food left to keep them that way. For now, that was enough. The defenders stayed through the night. Thomas and Jacob took turns watching the door, while Martha tried to sleep and failed. Every sound outside made her grip the knife tighter. Every creak of wood made her heart race. "You should rest," Eleanor said from her position by the window. "The baby needs you strong. The baby needs me alive first." Sarah Winters brought over a cup of weak tea. "Drink this. It's not much, but it'll help." Martha took it with shaking hands. The liquid was barely warm, more colored water than tea, but she drank it anyway. Across the room, Claire held Elizabeth close, rocking back and forth, with silent tears streaming down her face. "I'm sorry," Claire whispered. "This is my fault. If I hadn't come here—" "Stop!" Martha's voice was firm. "You needed help. I gave it. That's not something to apologize for." "But now people want to kill you because of it." "People wanted to kill me anyway. You just gave them an excuse." Dr. Harrison stood up from where he'd been checking Martha's pulse. "Your heartbeat's irregular. You need real food, not the scraps you've been surviving on." "There aren't any scraps left to spare." "Then we find more." Thomas crossed to the trap door. "How much is actually down there?" Martha closed her eyes. 47 pounds. I gave Mrs. Chen 3 pounds yesterday for helping with the soup." The cabin went silent. Everyone did the math in their heads. 47 pounds divided among how many people? The valley had at least 200 souls left alive, maybe more hiding in cabins no one had checked on. "That's nothing," Jacob said quietly. "That's barely enough to feed your group for a week." "I know." "So what do we do?" Martha looked at each face in the room. These people had risked their lives to defend her. Now she was supposed to tell them the truth, that she couldn't save them, that all her preparation and planning had only bought them time, not salvation. "We hunt," she said instead. Everyone stared at her. "Hunt what?" Thomas asked. "Every deer and elk within 50 miles is either dead or driven away by the snow." "Then we hunt rabbits, squirrels, anything with meat on its bones." "In this weather? That's suicide." "Starving is suicide too. At least this way we have a chance." Jacob and Thomas exchanged a look. Then Jacob nodded. "I'll go at first light. Thomas, you stay here and guard Martha." "Like hell, I'm going with you." "Someone needs to protect the cabin." "Then let one of the women do it." Thomas grabbed his rifle. "I've been sitting in that mansion watching people die for 2 weeks. I need to do something useful." They left before dawn. Martha watched them disappear into the white nothing and wondered if she'd ever see them again. The day dragged on. Sarah and Eleanor tried to organize the remaining supplies, but there wasn't much to organize. Some dried beans, a handful of withered carrots, half a wheel of cheese so hard it could break teeth. Mrs. Chen made soup from nothing. Hot water, a few grains of rice, some wild onions she'd foraged before the worst of the snow hit. It tasted like dishwater, but it was warm and it filled the stomach enough to quiet the worst of the hunger pangs. "My grandmother made soup like this," Martha said, "during the famine. She said the trick was to make your mind believe you were full, even when your body knew better." "Your grandmother was wise woman," Mrs. Chen said. "She was a survivor. There's a difference." "No difference. Survive is wise. Die is foolish." Martha wanted to argue, but her body chose that moment to betray her. Pain lanced through her abdomen, sharp enough to make her gasp. Dr. Harrison was at her side instantly. "What's wrong?" "Nothing, just a cramp." "That's not a cramp, that's a contraction." The cabin erupted into chaos. Sarah started boiling water. Eleanor ran to gather clean cloths. Claire clutched Elizabeth and backed into a corner. "It's too early," Martha said through gritted teeth. "The baby's not due for another 3 weeks." "The baby doesn't care about schedules." Dr. Harrison helped her to the bed. "How long have you been having pains?" "Since yesterday, but they were small. I thought—" "You thought you could ignore them." He pressed his hands against her belly. "The baby's in distress, Martha. Your body's shutting down from malnutrition. It's trying to expel the fetus before you both die." "No," Martha grabbed his wrist. "I didn't survive this long to lose my baby now." "Then you need to eat. Real food. Enough to give your body strength to carry this child to term." "I don't have real food." "Yes, you do." Dr. Harrison stood up. "You have 47 pounds in that pit. You're going to eat it." "That's for the valley." "The valley can go to hell," his voice cracked. "I've watched 17 people die in the last month. 17. I'm not watching you become number 18 because you're too stubborn to save yourself." Martha tried to stand. Another contraction hit, worse than before. She collapsed back on the bed, breathing hard. "How long do I have?" she asked. "Hours. Maybe a day if we're lucky." "And if I eat? If I take food from the pit?" "Maybe a week, maybe more. Enough time for the baby to develop a fighting chance." Martha looked at the trapdoor, at the last remnants of everything she'd worked for, at the final scraps of food that might keep the valley alive just a little bit longer. Then she looked at her belly, at the life growing inside her that Henrik would never meet. "Open the pit," she whispered. Sarah climbed down and came back with dried venison, hard cheese, preserved vegetables. Real food. The kind Martha hadn't eaten in weeks. She forced herself to chew slowly, even though every instinct screamed to devour it all. The food hit her empty stomach like a stone, and for a moment she thought she'd vomit it back up. But then her body remembered what nourishment felt like, and the hunger became something fierce and demanding. "More," she said. They fed her until the contractions eased, until color returned to her face, until the baby kicked with something like its old strength. 10 pounds, Dr. Harrison said, checking the supplies they'd used. "You just ate 10 pounds of food in one sitting." Martha did the math. 37 pounds left for the entire valley. "I'm a monster," she said. "You're a mother." Eleanor sat beside her. "You did what mothers do. You chose your child." "And what about everyone else's children?" No one had an answer. The hunters returned at dusk. Jacob and Thomas stumbled through the door carrying exactly nothing. "The traps were all empty," Jacob said, his face gray with exhaustion. "We saw tracks, but couldn't get close enough for a shot. Everything's either hibernating or dead." "So we have no meat," Martha said. "No meat, no game, no nothing." Thomas collapsed by the fire. "We're finished." The hopelessness in his voice was worse than any mob. Martha had seen Thomas face down angry men with a rifle, had seen him stand tall when his world was crumbling. But now he just looked broken. "There has to be something," she said. "There isn't. We've checked every option. The valley is empty of food, and the snow's too deep to reach any neighboring settlements." Jacob's voice was hollow. "We're going to die here. All of us." Martha's hands went to her belly. The baby kicked once, as if protesting its fate. "No," she said. "Martha, I said no." She stood up, her legs shaking. "I didn't dig that pit to give up now. I didn't watch my husband freeze to death so I could curl up and die when things got hard. There has to be a way." "There isn't," Thomas said flatly. "Then we make one." "How? How do you make food appear out of nothing?" Martha's mind raced. Think. Think like her grandmother would have thought. What did you do when there was nothing left? You found something everyone else missed. "The trading post," she said suddenly. Everyone looked at her like she'd lost her mind. "The trading post burned down in October," Sarah said gently. "There's nothing left." "The building burned, but what about the cellar? What about the storage rooms underground?" Jacob shook his head. "Even if there's something down there, it'll be buried under 10 feet of snow and ash. We'd never dig it out in time." "We won't know unless we try." "It's 20 miles away, through a blizzard. Then we better leave soon." The cabin exploded with protests. Too dangerous, too far, too impossible. But Martha wasn't listening. She was already pulling on her coat. "You can't go," Dr. Harrison said. "You're days away from giving birth." "Then someone else goes." "I'll go," Thomas said, standing up. "But I'm not making promises. Odds are I'll freeze before I get there." "I'm coming too," Jacob added. "And me," said Mrs. Chen. "You're a 60-year-old woman," Thomas said. "And you are spoiled rich man who never worked hard day in life. I think I have better chance." Despite everything, Martha almost smiled. They left within the hour. 3 people walking into a death trap because the alternative was watching everyone starve. The waiting was agony. Martha paced the cabin until her legs gave out, then sat and stared at the door until her eyes burned. The baby was active now, rolling and kicking like it knew something was wrong. "Talk to me," Eleanor said, sitting beside her. "Tell me about your grandmother, the one who survived the famine." Martha didn't want to talk, but the silence was worse than words. Her name was Ingrid. She was 14 when the famine hit Sweden. She watched her parents and 3 siblings starve to death in the space of 6 months. How did she survive? She learned to eat things other people wouldn't touch. Tree bark, grass, insects. She said the trick was not to think about what you were eating, just that you were eating. Did it work? She lived to 73, so I'd say yes. Martha's voice cracked. She always told me the same thing. Preparation isn't about having everything you need. It's about being ready to do what others won't. Like eating bugs? Like whatever it takes to see tomorrow. The door burst open. Martha's heart leaped, but it wasn't the hunters returning. It was Samuel Wright, and he wasn't alone. 50 men crowded into the doorway, all of them armed with makeshift weapons. Clubs, knives, a few actual rifles. "Where's the food?" Samuel demanded. "Gone," Martha said. "Liar, we know you're still hoarding. We can smell it cooking. That was soup made from nothing. Ask Mrs. Chen's daughters. They made it." Samuel's eyes swept the cabin, landing on the trapdoor. "Open it." "No." "I said open it." "And I said no." Samuel raised his club. "Last chance, widow. Open the pit or we'll beat you until you can't protect it anymore." Martha stood up. Her body was weak. Her legs trembled. but her voice was iron. "You want what's in that pit? Fine. Come look." She walked to the trapdoor and pulled it open. Samuel and 3 other men crowded around the edge, staring down into the darkness. "There's your treasure," Martha said. 37 pounds of food. Divided among the 200 people left in this valley, that's less than 3 ounces per person. Congratulations, Samuel. You've won yourself a mouthful. Samuel's face went purple. "You lying bitch. You've been giving food away for weeks. You must have more hidden somewhere." "I did have more. I gave it all away. This is what's left." "I don't believe you." "Then search the cabin. Tear it apart. See what you find." Samuel's men did exactly that. They ripped open cupboards, overturned the bed, tore through Martha's few possessions looking for hidden caches. They found nothing because there was nothing to find. "She's telling the truth," one of the men said quietly. "This is all there is." Samuel's hands clenched around his club. For a moment, Martha thought he was going to hit her anyway, just out of spite, just because he could. Then he lowered the weapon. "You doomed us all," he said. "You and your charity. If you'd kept that food for your own people instead of giving it to strangers, we might have survived." "My people are everyone in this valley." "Your people are fools, then." Samuel turned to leave, then stopped. "When you're watching your baby starve, remember this conversation. Remember that you chose strangers over your own blood." He left. His mom followed. The cabin felt empty in their wake, hollowed out by anger and desperation. Martha sat down and tried not to cry. "He's wrong," Eleanor said. "What you did was right." "Right doesn't fill empty stomachs." "No, but it means something. It has to mean something." Martha wanted to believe her, but belief was hard when your body was eating itself and your baby was running out of time. The hunters returned 3 hours after midnight. Martha had drifted into a fitful sleep and woke to the sound of the door crashing open. Jacob stood there, covered in frost, his face blue with cold. Behind him came Thomas, barely able to walk, and behind Thomas came Mrs. Chen, carrying a sack. "We found it," she said. Martha's heart stopped. "Found what?" Mrs. Chen upended the sack on the floor. Out tumbled canned goods, dozens of them. Peaches, beans, corn, condensed milk. "Trading post cellar," Jacob gasped. "Buried under the rubble. The cans survived the fire." Martha stared at the pile. "How much?" "Maybe 60 cans total. We could only carry this many. The rest are still there." 60 cans. Not enough to save everyone, but enough to buy time. Enough to make a difference. "There's more," Thomas said. "We found tracks, fresh tracks. Someone else is living out there." "Who?" "We don't know, but they've been hunting. We found rabbit carcasses. Someone knows how to survive in this." Martha's mind spun. Another survivor. Someone with skills. Someone who might be willing to trade knowledge for food. "We go back," she said. "Tomorrow. We get the rest of the cans and we find whoever made those tracks." "Martha, you can't. I'm not asking permission." She stood up, her hands pressed to her belly. "This baby's coming soon. Before it does, I'm making sure there's enough food to keep it alive." Dr. Harrison opened his mouth to argue. Then he saw her face and closed it again. They would go back. They would find the survivor. And Martha would do whatever it took to give her child a future, even if it killed her. Martha refused to stay behind. Dr. Harrison threatened. Eleanor begged. Sarah physically tried to block the door. But Martha pushed past them all and grabbed her coat. "The baby's not coming today," she said. "I can feel it. I have time." "You don't know that," Dr. Harrison said. "Yes, I do. A woman knows her own body." Martha pulled on Henrik's old boots. "And my body's telling me I've got one more fight left in me." They left at dawn, Martha, Jacob, Thomas, and Mrs. Chen. The snow had stopped falling, but the drifts were chest-high in places. Martha's pregnant belly made every step an exercise in agony, but she gritted her teeth and kept moving. "This is insane," Thomas muttered. "We're going to find you frozen in a snowbank." "Then dig me out and keep going." "You're the most stubborn woman I've ever met." "Thank you." The trading post ruins appeared after 2 hours of brutal hiking. The building was nothing but charred timber and ash, but Jacob led them around to the back, where the cellar entrance gaped open like a mouth. "Down here," he said. "Watch your step. The stairs are half collapsed." They descended into darkness. Mrs. Chen lit a lantern, and the light revealed a miracle. Shelves lined the walls, still standing despite the fire above. And on those shelves sat dozens of cans. Martha's hands shook as she reached for one. Peaches. The label was scorched, but readable. "How many?" she asked. Jacob was already counting. 93 cans, plus some sacks of dried goods that might still be edible if we're lucky. 93 cans. At 1 can per family, that was almost half the valley fed for a day. Maybe 2 if they rationed carefully. "Start loading," Martha said. They worked in silence, filling sacks with as many cans as they could carry. Martha's back screamed in protest, but she ignored it. Pain was temporary. Starvation was forever. "Someone's here," Thomas hissed. They froze. Footsteps crunched in the snow above them. Slow, deliberate, coming closer. Jacob raised his rifle. "Show yourself!" The footsteps stopped. Then a voice called down. Old, raspy, but strong. "You're trespassing on my supplies." Martha's heart hammered. "These supplies were abandoned when the trading post burned." "Abandoned by fools who didn't know how to dig. I've been living off this cellar for 6 weeks." "Then you've been living while the valley starved." Silence. Then the voice spoke again, softer this time. "Come up here. Let me see who I'm talking to." They climbed the stairs carefully. At the top stood a man who looked like something from a nightmare. Gaunt, filthy, wrapped in animal furs that stank of blood and smoke. But his eyes were sharp and alive. "My God," Thomas breathed. "Robert Chen?" Mrs. Chen gasped. "Husband?" The man's face crumbled. "May?" They rushed to each other like magnets, colliding in an embrace that spoke of months of separation and grief. Martha watched them and felt something crack open in her chest. "We thought you were dead," Mrs. Chen sobbed. "When the snow came and you didn't return, I was trapped here. The blizzard hit while I was checking the cellar for supplies. By the time it cleared, the snow was too deep to get back." Robert Chen held his wife at arm's length. "How did you survive?" "This woman," Mrs. Chen pointed at Martha. "She fed us. She fed everyone." Robert's eyes found Martha, taking in her pregnant belly and exhausted face. "You're the widow everyone was talking about. The one who buried food." "That's me." "How much did you have?" 600 pounds when I started. 37 pounds now. Robert Chen whistled low. "And you gave the rest away?" "People were starving." "People are always starving. That's not your responsibility." "Then whose responsibility is it?" Robert studied her for a long moment. Then he smiled, a real smile that transformed his haggard face. "You remind me of my mother. She survived the long march in China, saw things that would break most people, but she never stopped helping others, even when it meant going hungry herself. "Did she survive?" Martha asked. "No. She starved feeding orphans during the famine of '59. Robert's smile faded. "But the orphans lived. All 23 of them. That's what mattered to her." Martha felt tears sting her eyes. "I'm going to end up like her, aren't I?" "Maybe. Or maybe you'll be smarter." Robert gestured to the cellar. "Take what you need, but leave enough for me and May to survive until spring." "That's not a fair trade. You found this food first." "And you kept my wife alive. I'd say we're even." They divided the supplies, 60 cans for the valley, 33 for Robert. The dried goods were split the same way. It wasn't much, but it was more than they'd had that morning. "There's something else," Robert said as they loaded the last sack. "I've been trapping. Not much luck lately, but I know where the game is hiding. If you want to learn, I'll teach you." Jacob's eyes lit up. "You serious?" "Dead serious. But fair warning, it's brutal work. Most people don't have the stomach for it." "I'll do whatever it takes," Jacob said. "Then we start tomorrow. Bring strong rope and a sharp knife. And don't eat breakfast. You'll just throw it up anyway." They trudged back to Martha's cabin as the sun began to set. Martha's contractions had started again, small ones, barely noticeable. She didn't tell anyone. There was no point worrying them when there was nothing they could do. The valley greeted their return with desperate hope. People appeared from their cabins like ghosts, thin and hollow-eyed. Martha distributed the cans with shaking hands, watching families weep over single cans of beans. "This is one meal," a woman said, clutching her can like it was gold. "Just one meal. What do we do after that?" "We hunt," Martha said. "And we wait for spring." "Spring is 3 months away." "Then we survive 3 months." But Martha wasn't sure they could. Even with Robert's help, even with the cans, the math was brutal. Too many people, not enough food. Someone was going to die before this winter ended. Maybe a lot of someone's. The contractions worsened that night. Martha lay in bed trying to breathe through them while Dr. Harrison hovered uselessly. "I need to examine you," he said. "No." "Martha." "I said no. I know what you're going to tell me, and I don't want to hear it." "You're in labor. Active labor. This baby's coming whether you're ready or not." "Then it'll come. But I'm not lying here helpless while there's still work to do." She tried to stand. Her legs gave out. Dr. Harrison caught her before she hit the floor. "Enough," he said firmly. "You've done everything you can. Now you let us take care of you." Sarah and Eleanor prepared the bed while Mrs. Chen boiled water. Claire took Elizabeth outside, away from what was coming. The cabin transformed into a makeshift birthing room, and Martha finally surrendered to what her body had been trying to tell her for days. The labor lasted 14 hours. 14 hours of pain that rewrote Martha's understanding of suffering. She'd thought hunger was hard, thought freezing was hard, thought watching people die was hard. Labor made all of that feel like a gentle introduction to real agony. "Push," Dr. Harrison commanded. Martha pushed until she felt something tear. Pushed until she tasted blood. Pushed until the world narrowed to nothing but the desperate need to expel this child from her body. "I can see the head," Dr. Harrison said. "One more push. Come on, Martha, one more." She gathered every scrap of strength left in her broken body and pushed. The baby slid free in a rush of blood and fluid. For one horrible moment, there was silence. Then a wail split the air, thin and angry, and absolutely, beautifully alive. "It's a girl," Dr. Harrison said, his voice thick with emotion. "You have a daughter." They placed the baby on Martha's chest. She was tiny, barely 5 pounds, with Henrik's dark hair and Martha's stubborn chin. Her cries filled the cabin like music. "Hello, little one," Martha whispered. We made it." The baby's hand closed around Martha's finger, and Martha started crying so hard she couldn't breathe. All the fear, all the pain, all the impossible choices of the last months came pouring out in great, heaving sobs. "What will you name her?" Sarah asked. Martha looked down at her daughter, this tiny, fragile life that had somehow survived against every odd. "Ingrid," she said, "after my grandmother, the survivor." The next weeks blurred together. Martha's body tried to recover, while little Ingrid demanded to be fed every 2 hours. The valley's food situation remained desperate, but Robert Chen's hunting lessons started to pay off. Jacob brought back 2 rabbits, then a fox, then, miraculously, a young deer that had wandered too close to one of the traps. The deer fed 40 families for 3 days. But it wasn't enough. It was never enough. People continued dying. Old man Patterson froze in his cabin. The widow Douglas lost her youngest child to starvation. 3 more children followed over the next 2 weeks. Each death felt like a personal failure to Martha. She'd tried so hard, given away so much, and still people died. "You can't save everyone," Eleanor said one night, finding Martha crying over her daughter. "I know, but I can't stop trying either." "Why not? Why keep torturing yourself?" Martha looked down at Ingrid, sleeping peacefully despite the chaos around her. "Because someone has to care. Someone has to try. If we all just gave up and looked out for ourselves, what kind of world would that be?" "A realistic one." "Maybe, but I don't want to live in a realistic world. I want to live in one where people help each other, where we're stronger together than apart." Eleanor was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "You're going to teach her that, aren't you? Your daughter. You're going to teach her to be like you." "I'm going to teach her to survive. The rest is up to her." Spring came slowly, grudgingly, like it didn't want to release winter's grip. But it came. The snow started melting in early March. By April, green shoots pushed through the frozen earth. By May, the roads were passable again. Supply wagons arrived from Helena, loaded with food and medicine and news from the outside world. The driver took one look at the valley and crossed himself. "Jesus Christ, how many of you survived?" Thomas did a count. Of the 214 people who'd been in the valley when winter started, 143 remained. 71 dead, most of them children and elderly. The valley held a mass funeral on the first warm day. Martha stood with Ingrid in her arms and listened to names being read. So many names. So many lives cut short by cold and hunger. Samuel Wright's name was on the list. He'd frozen to death in late February, alone in his cabin, surrounded by religious pamphlets, but no food. Martha felt nothing when she heard his name. No satisfaction, no grief, just exhaustion. The valley slowly came back to life. People planted gardens, repaired damaged cabins, started talking about the future instead of just survival. But something had changed. The easy assumptions about civilization and safety were gone, replaced by a harder knowledge. Winter would come again, and next time they would be ready. Martha's cabin became a gathering place. People came to learn the skills she'd used to survive: how to preserve food, how to ration, how to prepare for the worst. She taught them everything her grandmother had taught her, holding Ingrid while she spoke. "The trick isn't having everything you need," she told them. "It's being ready to adapt when you don't." One evening in June, Eleanor appeared at Martha's door with an unexpected proposal. "We want to build a community storehouse," she said, "a place where everyone contributes what they can and everyone takes what they need. Thomas is willing to fund the construction if you'll manage the supplies." Martha stared at her. You want me to run a charity warehouse? I want you to run a survival center. Teach people what you know. Help them prepare for the next winter before it arrives." Elolinar's voice dropped. "We failed, Martha. We had money and resources and education, and we failed. You had nothing but knowledge passed down from your grandmother, and you saved more lives than anyone. We need that knowledge. The whole valley needs it." Martha looked down at Ingrid, who gurgled contentedly in her arms. "I'll do it on one condition," she said. "Name it." "Every child in this valley learns these skills. Rich or poor, boy or girl, everyone learns how to survive." Elelinar smiled. "Deal." The storehouse went up by August, a solid building with a deep cellar, designed exactly like the pit Martha had dug beneath her cabin. The valley contributed supplies throughout the summer and fall. By the time the first snow fell in November, they had over 2,000 pounds of food stored away. And this time, when winter came, no one starved. Martha stood outside the storehouse on the first anniversary of Henrik's death, holding 1-year-old Ingrid and watching snow fall. Her daughter pointed at the white flakes with delight, laughing like winter was something beautiful instead of deadly. "Your father would be proud," Martha whispered. "We survived. We built something that lasts." Ingrid reached for a snowflake. It melted on her palm, and she looked up at Martha with Henrik's dark eyes. "Mama," she said, her first word. Martha held her daughter close and felt something shift inside her chest. The grief was still there. It would always be there. But it wasn't the only thing anymore. There was also pride and hope, and the bone-deep knowledge that she'd done exactly what she set out to do. She'd survived, and she'd made sure others could survive too. The valley would remember the winter of 1886 as the year 71 people died, but they would also remember it as the year Martha Thornton taught them that survival wasn't about wealth or privilege or even luck. It was about preparation, about community, about being willing to share what you had so that everyone could see tomorrow. And as long as Martha drew breath, as long as she could teach her daughter and anyone else who would listen, those lessons would endure. Winter would always come, but from now on, the valley would be ready.